Hello crafty friends, Amanda here with Crafting with Amanda, and if you haven't watched my channel before, you may not know this, but this is one of my favorite days of the month because this is when the Makers with Heart get their mystery envelope and reveal the product or project that they had made. So this month Kim sent out our guidelines and our paper pieces, and her thing was that we needed to use all the papers that she sent. We can add any cardstock, any embellishments, but it has to be a project that is a way to share a recipe, such as a recipe card, a pocket, a layout, something. And then she asked us to use stamps that would relate to what that recipe is, and wished us a happy Thanksgiving. So I make apple pies. I have made tons of apple pies. We had 4 apple trees that we planted at the farm, plus there was a huge crabapple tree which actually grew the Macintosh apple. So they were small, but they weren't the super small crab apples. So I am composing, I am going to share my pie dough recipe as well as my apple pie filling. So what I did is I took the freshly baked recipe card stamp set, and I'm using the backs from all, some of the little words on there to highlight some of the instructions in this recipe. So the pie dough recipe is one that was given to me by a grandmother from a Masonic organization named Ramona Green, and when we made it for the first time, we didn't understand the recipe fully, but thankfully her granddaughter was staying at our house, and so when the mom came to pick up the granddaughter, she knew her mom's recipe and where we had gone wrong and let us know. So that's exactly what I did here, is I spelled out in detail how to do the pie dough. So then the pie filling recipe, again, I'm highlighting some of those words of the instructions, and then the apple pie filling title is a little longer than any of the stamps from that freshly baked recipe card. So I'm showing you here how I'm kind of using the side of the ink pad to measure, to line it up so that I don't have too much overlap when I highlight that title. I go ahead and ink in, I don't think I use candy apple, which is the color of the paper, but I use scarlet to do all my edging. And I went on the Cricut and I searched for the word apron, and I think this was from the backcountry image set, and I just made this apron. I customized the colors just to make it fun and go more with the papers that Kim had sent us. And then this strip that's kind of like the waistband of the apron, I wanted to give it more interest, so I'm taking my score tool and my cutter and I'm just scoring in a couple lines, and I'm going to fold those so that I can get some darker ink on the creases and make it more like a tie around their waist, where it's not flat, it has some wrinkles to it. So that's what I'm doing here. Off camera, I went ahead with a very old stamp of the month, something bushel. Let me find the name for you. It was a bushel and a peck, and it was from 2018 in June, and I've only used, I think, one stamp from that set, but I knew I needed it because I have made apple pies my whole life. So off camera, I did the pie and the apples and the bushel basket from that stamp set. And then here you can see from the In Full Bloom stamp set, I am doing apple blossoms. I went online and looked at the flowers and looked again at this In Full Bloom, and it's like, these are apple blossoms, or could be. So went ahead and inked those, used my Misty. I colored them in using the shimmer brushes. And now I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do this layout with the apron, and I don't know my background. I kept thinking I wanted something with texture, and Kim didn't say we could add any paper, just any cardstock. So I'm taking a look at everything. I'm trying to figure out, first of all, what the flow is going to be. And I know that I'm going to make pockets out of these 4x6 pieces that Kim sent us for my recipe card to go in, because when I have a printer that's working again, our printer died, I will type up these recipe cards and actually stack them into my scrapbook page, and who knows, maybe down the road people will be able to pull those recipes and take them home. I put on the picture, or put on the, the screen pictures of the pies that I made, because again, I don't have a printer and I don't have pictures just waiting of my apple pies. So I found these in my collection of photos, but I wasn't able to print them to have them to put on the layout. But I wanted you to see that's what I'm going to do, is put the 2 pictures of that pie on this layout. So now I wanted to show you when I put those pies down, I kind of am using it to frame in for the pie dough recipe, and then I'm using the bushel basket of apples, which is really appropriate because we filled bushel baskets of apples. I canned apple pie filling one year. I made apple pies. I did apple crisps another year. At one point in my freezer, I had 51 apple pies, unbaked, frozen, ready to go in the oven, and then another 8 apple crisps, just because we had so many apples that year, and I still had, a couple dozen jars of the apple pie filling canned and on my shelf. So now I'm just going through and kind of doing some dry fitting of where I want these embellishments to go. I have the idea of tucking the recipe cards behind in the pockets, and I'm just kind of playing what I end up with and what I'm playing with here. Like, I thought, okay, this is going to look like kind of like a corsage on the apron, but spoiler, that doesn't end up in the actual end layout, because who wears a corsage when they're making apple pies or cooking in the kitchen? I certainly don't. So, and I also already had 3 configurations of flowers. So here I pulled the avocado green as a background, because that's also one of the colors in the striped paper that Kim sent us. But it needed more, and I thought about framing the whole thing, but I didn't feel like that was right. So here I cut the avocado green down 11.5 by 11.5, and then I have just that outside border on the top and the right, kind of framing the rest of the layout, and you'll see how this all comes together. So here I am with the scarlet ink, inking more of the edges of the papers that are going to go on the layout. I'm just kind of, again, going forward with how things are going to come together, where these flowers are going to end up. I'm trying to decide how much of this needs to be pop dotted. I'm also, again, feeling that there needs to be something in the background, some texture, something. I thought about doing like splatters or in white, especially like as a flower, or, a reference to flour all over the kitchen. But I'm a pretty neat baker, so I don't really have, I'll have a cutting board that's a mess, but for the most part, I'm pretty tidy when I cook. So I'm still, it's funny, I know from watching this, I'm hesitant on where I'm going to put all of these embellishments, because I'm trying to figure out what goes in the background. So I go to my stencil envelope and find this little star stencil and absolutely love it. And so this is, I believe, from the Slimline card stencil pack from the core catalog. And my stencil did move a little bit. I wasn't holding it down as firmly as I should have, but it ends up behind the apron, so you don't see that anyhow. But I think this is just what I needed. I did it in topiary green, so it's darker than the avocado. It's not quite as bright as the willow. I just thought it was a great color for this. So now I'm going to do the opposite corner from the top, and I realized that I didn't go all the way to the corner, and I wanted to emulate that, so I stopped short. So here I've glued everything down to this point, but I wanted to show you how to make photo pockets, and also how I space my pies. So I put the top and bottom ones on, and then you can put the middle one in. Here's a reminder of what's going to go where those photo cards are. And now I did a stopper so that the recipe itself doesn't go too far down into that pocket. It sticks up a little bit so people can see the ingredients, and it kind of adds to the page. And like I said, when I have a printer that's working again, I will do some typed up recipes and have those in the pockets of the scrapbook. And then I was kind of looking at this layout, and when I had written out the recipe earlier to write it up, I had included tips with the recipe, but when I actually did the recipe cards, I didn't include those tips. So I decided that I would write the tips on the bottom of the apron. And on camera, I didn't actually write the word tips, but as I was editing the video, I realized, oh, I didn't write the word tips. So I did go back and add that. But here, I wanted it kind of at an angle, more square to the bottom of the apron, not necessarily square to the page. So you can see how once I drew one line, I could reference the other ones through that clear ruler and just write up with the white gel pen. I'm looking at the layout here. I kind of like to do that, of just take a minute and look over things. And I realized the outline of those apples, it wasn't working for me. So colored those in with the shimmer brushes. And then I was reading back over Kim's rule to make sure that I hadn't broken any rules, because I've been known to ask forgiveness later. And it said use all the pieces that she sent, and I hadn't. So it's funny, I have these two little pieces and I didn't know what I was going to do with them, and I tucked them into the pocket of the apron. Well, as soon as I did that and I knew they had the wood grain side, I had to cut little wooden spoons and spatulas out of it, right? So thank you, Kim, for making us use every piece. If you hadn't said that and I hadn't seen that in the rules, I think this layout would be lacking something, and it's those wooden tools that are now in that apron pocket. And like I said, I did go back in between, right next to that pocket with the wooden spoons, I did write the word tips in capital letters so that people know what's there. But here's the layout. I loved this challenge. Thank you so much, Kim. I always look forward to these. Be sure to check out the description under my video, because it will have the links to all the other Makers with Heart, and you can check out what they did with the same pieces. Be kind to yourself. Blessings.